Amanda's childhood was anything but ordinary. Her mother's obsession with wealth and resentment toward family responsibilities led to years of tension and heartbreak. When a family inheritance allowed Amanda's father to start a successful business, her mother finally got the luxury she craved and abandoned her family for a life of status and indulgence. But the ultimate betrayal came after Amanda's father passed away. Her mother forged Amanda's signature to sell their family home, using the money to start a new life with a younger husband. Yet when her mom's dream life fell apart, she came crawling back, only to find her daughter holding the ultimate weapon for payback. Welcome to the Payback Vault, your go-to hub for revenge stories, epic karma, and jaw-dropping payback. If you love thrilling tales of justice, betrayal, and intense drama, you're in the right place. My story starts in my early childhood, back when family life was supposed to be about love, learning, and laughter. For most kids, it was. But for me, home was a place of tension. My mom, a bitter accountant, hated her job with a passion she didn't bother hiding. Almost every night, she'd come home, throw her bag on the kitchen counter, and start complaining. Dad, on the other hand, was the opposite. He managed a retail chain, and while his work was far from easy, he was calm and steady, a rock in our family's constant storm. He'd often advise Mom to look for a new job if she was so unhappy, but she'd just scoff. She didn't want a new job. She wanted no job. Her dream was a life of wealth, comfort, and luxury, and she'd tell anyone who'd listen that she deserved it. Even as a kid, I could see how different my parents were. Dad was grounded, hardworking, and reliable. Mom was ambitious, but in a way that made her look down on our family's modest lifestyle. She wanted to be rich but had no interest in working for it. The tension simmered every day, and I quickly learned to drown out her complaints with books and homework. It was my escape. Then one day, everything changed with a single phone call. My dad's uncle, Jerry, had passed away, and we learned that he left a significant estate. For most people, an inheritance means a bit of extra comfort, but for my mom, it was like a golden ticket to the life she'd always dreamed about. I'll never forget the moment Dad announced the inheritance. We were at the dinner table, and Mom had just launched into her usual rant about how miserable her job made her. Dad looked up from his plate and interrupted her, his voice calm but serious. Jerry died, he said. Mom froze, her face lighting up with what could only be described as excitement. Her first question wasn't about how he passed or if there'd be a funeral. She went straight to, did he leave us anything? When Dad confirmed that Jerry had left him a substantial sum, Mom's eyes practically gleamed with anticipation. She even started throwing out ideas for a vacation house. But Dad had other plans. I'm going to start my own business, he said. With this, we could make it work. We'll build something for ourselves. Mom looked at him like he'd just suggested burning the money. But after a tense silence, she agreed, though not without securing a promise that, once the business took off, she'd have her share of nice things. Over the next 3 years, our family's life changed dramatically. Dad worked tirelessly to build the courier company, while Mom handled the accounting side, and I'd spend afternoons after school watching them work side by side. Despite the long hours, there was an energy in the air, a sense of purpose that felt almost magical, and soon enough, the hard work started to pay off. We moved to a beautiful home, and Dad even bought 2 luxury cars, one for him and one for Mom. But that's when things really started to change. One morning, Mom sat down at the breakfast table, coffee in hand, and announced with a satisfied smile, I'm done. I'm quitting the company. She looked around the kitchen like she'd just conquered the world. Dad didn't seem surprised. He just nodded and said they'd hire an accountant to take over her duties. I almost choked on my cereal. She'd gone from hating her old job to helping build a successful business, and now she wanted to abandon that too. Mom's newfound freedom turned into an obsession with status. She surrounded herself with wealthy friends who spent their days shopping, vacationing, and comparing designer handbags. Her old friends, the ones who'd been with her when we were a normal family, seemed to fade out of her life. Even her relationship with me changed. She was rarely home, always off to Aspen or Cabo with her new friends. I can't count the number of times I asked to go on one of her trips, but she'd always say, these trips are my time to get away from, well, everything. She never said it outright, but I knew everything included me and Dad. High school graduation came, and by the time I left for dental school, my dad was the only real family I had. He helped me move into my dorm, setting up my room with the same care he put into his business. Mom didn't come, she was in the Bahamas, celebrating some friend's new yacht. Every Sunday, Dad and I would have our video calls. He'd listen to me talk about school, my friends, my classes. Mom would sometimes join but would usually hover in the background, more interested in her phone than in me. I could feel the disconnect deepening. Then, just as I was settling into my new life, Dad dropped a bombshell. It was during one of our usual calls when he told me the news. He had cancer. And it was aggressive. My heart broke. But Dad, always practical, had a plan. He'd sell the company and set up a trust to ensure my education was covered. "I don't want you or your mother to worry about anything," he said, but even then, I could sense he was more worried about her than me. Those last months were painful. I juggled school with trips home to see him, watching helplessly as he grew weaker. Mom, meanwhile, seemed almost absent, fluttering around and putting on a show of grief when people were watching. But I'd catch her checking his business papers, or glancing at her watch, like she was waiting for it all to end. When he passed, it was as if the world stopped turning. I was there, holding his hand. Mom was at a spa. The funeral was a spectacle. Mom played the part of a grieving widow, sobbing on the arms of friends, putting on a show that felt almost insulting. I thought that was the worst of it, but I was wrong. A few weeks after the funeral, we gathered at the notary's office for the reading of Dad's will. The lawyer explained that Dad had left the family house to both of us and had set up a trust fund for my education. The rest of the company proceeds were split, 60% to me, and 40% to her. Mom's reaction was instant and ugly. She demanded that the unfair will be changed, insisting that she needed more to maintain her lifestyle. I left that meeting feeling like I'd finally seen my mom for who she truly was. A month later, I got a call from our old neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins. "Amanda," she said cautiously, "they're moving things out of the house." My blood ran cold. I knew immediately that something was wrong. When I called Mom, she didn't even try to deny it. She laughed and said, "Oh, that? Brad and I got a fantastic price." Brad, her new husband, a man I'd never even met. I later learned she'd forged my signature to sell the house, taking everything without a second thought. Years passed. I finished dental school, opened a practice, and built the life my father would have been proud of. Then, one day, my doorbell rang, and when I opened it, I could hardly believe what I saw. My mother stood there, unrecognizable. Gone was the pristine woman who had once cared more about her image than anything else. She looked worn, desperate. "Brad left me," she sobbed. "He took everything. I had nowhere else to go." I invited her in, listening as she told me how her soulmate had drained her bank account, gambled away her last dollars, and run off with a younger woman. She begged me to let her stay, promising she'd changed, but I felt no sympathy, no empathy, only satisfaction. I pulled out my phone and played a recording I'd saved from our last conversation, the one where she admitted to forging my signature. Her face went pale. "If you contact me again," I said quietly, "I'll send this to the police." She begged, but I stood firm, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely at peace. After she left, I walked back to my room and pulled out an old photo album. There was a picture of the three of us, Dad, Mom, and me, at the beach, all smiling. I touched Dad's face gently. "I miss you," I whispered. Life has a way of working itself out, with or without us, and sometimes, the best revenge is simply letting karma do its job. Justice served, one story at a time. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. What would you have done in Amanda's place? Share your thoughts below, and as always, stay tuned for more shocking tales right here on the Payback Vault.